Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
If you have arthritis, step into the closest aisle and begin to release your faith.
Well, I want to say to you, my good brother, my dear sister, I understand that pain.
She was using this cane, could not walk, came out of it, began running, all the pain is gone, she's healed by the power.
Well, isn't it you have tuberculosis in both lungs.
Yes, sir.
You've come for your healing.
Yes, I have.
Have you a family?
I have.
Children?
2 sons, yes.
Are they depending on this tonight?
They are.
Put your hands on your chest. Audience, have compassion for a mother tonight. Oh God, open these lungs. Christ, I know thou art standing by my side, and I touch her as you would have me touch her. I touch her because you tell me to touch her in the name of Christ.
Some that have sicknesses, you've been hurting, you've been aching, you've got arthritis, you've got other things in your body that are wrong. And right now, in the name of Jesus, I want you to stand up and say, I receive my healing right now in Jesus' name. Right now, in Jesus' name, I receive it.
The best time to sow is when you're hit.
Look at that smile on her face. Does she look like somebody that's dying? Stand to your feet and smile. Look at that. First time she's here and God heals her AIDS. Blood is purified. Somebody give the Lord a big hand.
For a sacrificial investment of $30 or more to the prayer ministry.
And I want you to make a $1,000 vow of faith. Oh, I know you probably don't have $1,000, but vow it.
Vow $1,000 to Jesus Christ, to the work of God. You probably don't have it, but he will bless you. In fact, that's the best time to give, is when you don't have the resources, you don't have a job. You might be living on some kind of assistance, or maybe you're living with someone else and you've got mouths to feed and a mortgage payment and bills to pay. But that's the best time to sow those seeds of faith, because Jesus Christ is the great provider. As they say, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. That's exactly how it works. I was doing research for this show this week, and I found myself just getting livid, just angry, more and more when I was going through the video clips and the audio clips and reading the articles and looking at the studies, and I found myself just livid at these people. This show, we're talking about faith healers. Faith healing is founded on the belief that certain people or places have the ability to cure and heal. There's something or someone out there who can eliminate disease or heal injury through a close connection to a higher power. Faith healing can involve prayer. It can mean you visit a religious shrine. It might be just a strong belief in a supreme being out there somewhere. Faith healers. I was given one of the privileges of my life earlier this week. I had a chance to speak to James Randi, better known as the Amazing Randi, who was an illusionist for a long, long time and an illustrious career, and then dedicated his post-illusionist career to debunking all of the bunk that's out there, going after a lot of the charlatans and the psychics and those guys. And he's just brilliantly funny, and he is a tremendous champion of skeptical thinking. Now, when I started to doubt my own faith, I didn't know much about James Randi at all. And he was one of the people I remember watching and catching his clips on YouTube and reading articles, and I became introduced to him. And I'd always wanted the chance to be able to speak to him. And I know everybody's pawing at the guy. He's part of the Reason Rally. He's going to be on the national stage coming up in March. And you know, he's done Carson, he's done Barbara Walter, he's done all these shows for decades upon decades upon decades. Why would he give me the time of day? So out of the clear blue, I sent him a request. And I said, look, you don't know who I am. I know you normally don't do a lot with the atheist community. And the reason that he doesn't is because he believes that most of the atheist community is just always pissed off. They're always pissed off. They're always crabby. And I don't think he really wants to attach his name to vitriol. What he wants is productive skepticism, right? And so I assured him, look, let's check out my show. You know, I've interviewed some other people. I would love the opportunity to have a conversation. And lo and behold, I got a reply from James Randi. Now, we had to pre-record the conversation because of his tight schedule. We spent just under 30 minutes on the phone, and I will play that conversation for you right now. You were once known as the Amazing Randi. Now, I've got a worldwide audience, and many aren't culturally aware of who the Amazing Randi is. So just humor me. Give me some background. You were an illusionist, and for how long?
Well, it depends on how you define illusionist. I was an actor playing the part of a magician, a conjurer more correctly, and I did that all of my life up until the age of just past 60, at which I determined that I was getting a bit old for the touring act, and it had been pretty strenuous as an escape artist particularly. But I decided I would then go on the lecture circuit and give talks about being skeptical and critical of what were presented by the media as truth. And I had been pursuing that for decades previous to that, but I had to have a professional life. What I eventually did within the next couple of years after that is I founded the James Randi Educational Foundation and made an agreement with the foundation that I would receive a salary which was approximately equal to what I had previously enjoyed as an entertainer, and it's been that way ever since.
I used to be a believer. I was raised up in the Christian faith. I was a Christian broadcaster for 12 years full time. And back in the early 90s on the radio station, it was a little small, kind of a little radio station at the time, right before contemporary Christian music sort of blossomed and the station did with it. But we used to play once a day on the air, 15 minutes of preaching by evangelist and faith healer Peter Popoff. Now, I remember back in '86, he had already been exposed. But even in the early 90s, he was still on the air. I think he filed for bankruptcy, right? And then he came back. Is that what happened?
Well, he declared himself bankrupt. I don't know whether that was official or not. He said he did, but I don't believe much of what Peter Popoff publishes as fact, especially some of his strange supernatural ideas. He changed the name of his ministry. I exposed him on the Johnny Carson show rather definitively, and Carson was quite satisfied that we had done a job on him and told people the truth about what he was. But as Johnny and I both found out, that didn't work at all, because you cannot expose these people. The believers out there don't listen to what you're saying. They only listen to what's preached to them as truth. And Popoff simply changed the name of his ministry from Peter Popoff Ministries to People United for Christ. And he just changed his letterhead and went right ahead and continued on in the same business.
Yes, 25 years later, and he's still... I had a friend who was a skeptic who sent some, I don't know if it was an email, it was a request, actually visited the website and sent a request. And in the mail, they got like a vial of prayer water, holy water. I don't know, it was like prayer cloth. It was some icon, right? Some symbol. And then there was this long 5-page printed letter that said, please send us your money. And this is pretty common, right? I mean, among not just Peter Popoff, but everywhere we go. Is that accurate?
Quite accurate. Excuse me, I stepped away from the microphone for a moment, but I'm back. Are you enjoying video or not?
I don't have video at this time, no.
Oh, I see. My video camera is on, and I was about to hold up to you a stack of mail that I got just by going through one of the spare cartons that I'm unpacking. I've just moved back into my home that was damaged by a hurricane a few years ago, and it's been refurbished now. And I'm unpacking stuff that I had stuffed away in cartons. And I have literally hundreds of letters from Peter Popoff, literally, because I got on his list. And I got on the list as Adam Jersin, Jersin, and apparently Reverend Popoff didn't receive some image from Jesus or an angel or something, there's somebody who should be watching out for him. And he has been sending me this material. Adam Jerson, by the way, is an anagram for James Randi. And I've been receiving this mail, and I've been stacking it away. I have a huge carton. It's a carton I can barely lift. And I just came upon this stack of several hundred more letters that have been sent out in the mail to me, as they've been sent out by the hundreds of thousands every year by Peter Popoff Ministries, or pardon me, People United for Christ, I'm sorry. And I sort of kept track of what he's doing, but it's nothing new. He's doing the same old thing with the prayer shawls and the insoles that you put into your shoes in order to bring the Holy Spirit to you. How that works, I don't know. Mechanically, it doesn't sound very likely to me. In any case, Popoff is still in business, and Carson used to call me after his retirement about once a week, I guess, and he'd say to me, "Wait, I just saw Peter Popoff on TV again on a different channel. He's still in business." Johnny seemed to be very amazed at that, and I told him, as I did many times, I said, "John, these are unsinkable rubber ducks. They simply don't listen to what they're told, and if they do hear it at all, they don't absorb it and they don't remember it. They're back looking to be fleeced again." I got letters, any number of letters, from people who very sadly wrote me and said, "Well, thank you very much, Mr. Randi, for exposing Peter Popoff. I guess he is a crook, and I'm not going to deal with him any longer. I'm now sending my money to Reverend Ainsley or somebody else." But they're determined to be swindled. They are sheep, and they can't wait to get to the abattoir.
Talking here with James Randi, the amazing Randi, and of course of the James Randi Educational Foundation. You've taken on many more than Peter Popoff. I saw the classic Carson bit with Uri Geller, right? He was the famous, you call him a psychic, said he could read your mind, had special powers. He was bending the spoon, and he was doing all that under conditions that he controlled. This is a common thread, right? The faith healer, the illusionist, they set up the deck in their favor, and then they make it look like God is doing a miracle.
Yeah. Well, Geller doesn't appeal to God very much. I think he believes he is God. So he doesn't appeal to a lesser spirit, of course. But Geller is now on a campaign. I think it's pretty evident that he's trying to back out of the hole that he's gotten himself in, because he's been exposed so many times. His tricks, 11, 12-year-old magicians are doing his tricks now, and doing them as well as he ever did them. He only has 5 tricks that he has ever exhibited. And I must admit that he went a long way on 5 tricks. Most magicians have a much, much larger repertoire than that. But Papa, well, I get them mixed up all the time. Crooks are crooks, you know. Geller is now saying that he doesn't want to be known as a psychic. He wants to be known as a mystifier. Now, you tell me the difference. I don't really know.
Well, I'm mystified personally. I don't understand what the distinction is.
But he is trying to get off the hook, you see, but he can't. He finds himself in a serious situation, I'm sure, if he thinks about it at all. If he were now to say, "No, it was all tricks, I fooled you, ho, 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 the joke's on you," he would be sued by literally agencies all over the world, including some governments who spent literally millions of dollars, or the equivalent thereof, to investigate the Geller effect, because he swore to them. He said many, many times, I've got an endless array of video clips here where he looks straight into the camera or at the host of the show and says, no, I don't know how to do tricks. This is all real. This is the real thing. And he's lying. And he's lying right in his teeth. And if he now has to say that he was lying all this time, he would get sued. And he just couldn't avoid losing the case, because he has said that he's the real thing. And by so doing, he's lulled them into starting to spend money to investigate the effect and give him a lot of money at the same time.
Let's say that they put up the revival tent somewhere near us, and you and I both attend a faith healing service tonight, okay? Forgive me for asking such a broad question, but what are some of the tactics? You probably see the patterns, the red flags, the tricks of the trade. Somebody goes in to receive their healing. What kind of things should they be looking for?
Well, there are a whole raft of standard gimmicks. Stretching the leg, for one thing, that's a thing that Popoff did at one time as well, and W.V. Grant. I don't know what Grant's doing now. Maybe he's in jail again. I don't know. But W.V. Grant he's the son of the original W.V. Grant. He used to do well, maybe still does, the stretching the leg gimmick, where he says, oh, you've got one leg longer than the other. And it's hard to describe, but he sits the person on a chair, and they stretch their legs out horizontally in front of them. And by simply pulling a shoe, with a man particularly, pulling one of his shoes off slightly at the heel, he can show that the two legs don't look the same length. And then he gestures over it and shakes the legs and such, and then he says, stand up. The person stands up, and lo and behold, the legs are the same length. They were the same length in the first place, or the fellow would be falling over. But everyone looks upon this as a miracle. That's one of the standard gimmicks. Now, mind you, some of them aren't as blatant as that. That's a pretty crude trick, though it works with the faithful. Anything will work with the faithful. Felt insoles, but we already went through that. It's incredible that the gimmicks are so simple. The business of looking out into the audience and saying, M, there's someone here with a name beginning with M, or someone is thinking about someone with a name beginning with M. Now, how could you possibly miss, when you've got 1,000 or so people in front of you, having someone that's going to respond to that? And then they do the act of cold reading, which is throwing out guesses and suggestions and waiting until they react to the right one, and then concentrating on that. It's you could call it a mind reading gimmick. It's a standard thing with the evangelists who do the cold reading act, like Sylvia Browne and John Edward. Of course, this is all that they do, except that they also do hot readings, and the hot readings mean that the people have either sent them letters in advance with their name and address and phone number and all the information about what they're suffering from, if they are suffering from something. That is a hot reading because the evangelist, goes out there already equipped with knowledge of that and says something like, there's a Henry B somewhere in the audience. Who is that? And the person holds up their head. Well, he already has the information on the card in front of him at the podium, and so he just reads it off. So there are many, many gimmicks like this.
I've heard some people say, faith healers give hope. All right, let's say they're charlatans. But if so many people go and they feel good and they have positive feelings, and people who have positive feelings will often get better. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. It's a case of whether you want to be better or just feel better. Because what they give you is false hope. They give you some sort of surcease for the moment. You feel better. You're encouraged. It's a placebo effect. You feel better. But you've still got the tumor or the flu or the virus or whatever you've got. You've still got it, and you will eventually die from it if it's serious enough. This is not curing. This is just making people feel better temporarily. And that is a very dangerous thing. What they do is they say, oh, I was going to have radiation for our chemo or whatever for the problem that I have. Now I don't have to. I feel much better today. And they ignore medical help, and then they just simply die of it. It's the same with the Filipino psychic surgeons, so-called, in the Philippine Islands. They have a great racket going there, and it brings in a huge amount of money to the Philippine economy every year from people from all over the world. They travel there. The Filipino so-called psychic surgeons, again, they perform an operation using, in many cases, real blood, but it's not the blood coming from the patient on the table. They use sleight of hand techniques to produce what look like tumors. Then they throw them away in the trash can, and they wipe the patient's abdomen and send them on their way. Nothing has happened. It's just sleight of hand. But the people feel much better, and then they go home and die.
Talking here with James Randi. Very quickly, I do want to address the $1 million challenge. Now, for those who follow your work, they're familiar with it, but many are not. Would you explain the $1 million challenge for us?
Very simple. Many years ago, I was challenged on a radio program out of New York, I believe it was, by a parapsychologist and a couple of rather negative folks who didn't like what I was saying and doing. And they said, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? And so I said, okay, I'll give $1,000 to any person or persons who can provide evidence of any paranormal, occult, or supernatural event of any kind under proper observing conditions. That sort of silenced them at that point. Now, I had the $1,000 at that time, but months that followed, sometimes I didn't quite have that $1,000 in the bank. So I was being a little deceptive there, but pretty soon the bank balance would come back up again. It is now $1 million. It got to be $1,000, from $1,000 to $5,000, then $10,000, eventually $100,000, and now it's $1 million because of the generosity, the largesse, if you will, of a very wealthy gentleman in Virginia who offered to put some teeth into our offer. And for the last, I guess, 11 years now, it has stood at $1 million as a prize to anyone who can produce evidence of any paranormal, occult, or supernatural event or power of any kind under proper observing conditions.
Now, some will argue, though, that you're stacking the deck in your favor. So what are proper observing conditions?
Depends on what they say.
Okay.
They set the conditions. I don't. No, this is you see, if you go to my webpage, which is called Swift, after Jonathan Swift, the famous, some would say cynic, but I say skeptic. If you go to the page, you will find the rules and conditions right there. We get together one way or the other, either by mail or by telephone or whatever, and we decide what a proper test of the claimed powers would be. And then we put it into the hands of independent people. I don't conduct the test unless I'm specifically asked to do so, and I've often done that upon such a request, because they say that I put out negative vibrations, you see. And I even insist that I not be told when the test is going to take place. That happened with the BBC, I guess it was 3 years ago now. BBC wanted to do a definitive test of homeopathy, and I said that I would directly offer my $1 million prize to anyone who came through with evidence of that. And they said that they would give me a call when they're going to do the test. And I said, no, don't tell me when you're going to do the test. Call me only after you've done the test, at least 48 hours after you've done the test, so that I can't interfere with it with negative vibrations. And they thought that was rather silly, but I said, no, this is what they say. They say, oh, it didn't work because he put out the neg vibes, as they call them. And they did the test very definitively, and it turned out to be just random results. It's exactly what chance would dictate. And the homeopaths immediately said, of course, no, it wasn't done properly. And we reminded them, you did the tests, you designed the tests, you approved the protocol, and you performed the test yourselves under controlled conditions, observing conditions. And they said, oh, there was something wrong with the tests then. So there's nothing, you can't win with these people. They always come up with excuses afterwards, and you just wait to see what variety of excuses are going to be offered. And incidentally, homeopathy is supposed to be a form of medicine, but if it worked, because the homeopathic remedies have 0 ingredients in them, they're nothing but binder, lactose or fiber or whatever in the pills. There are no active ingredients in homeopathic compounds. That would be paranormal. That's why we include it in the $1 Million Challenge.
You must take a lot of heat for going after homeopathy. I mean, it's all natural. It must be good for us. Western medicine especially is evil. The drug companies are evil, all of these types of things. But you must take a lot of heat for that. You've taken a pretty hard stand.
Yeah, sure, it's not a hard stand. I simply say, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. You say it does. Prove it. I give you $1 million. It's that simple. They don't have to invest anything. Mind you, I don't pay their costs to travel from Bulgaria or whatever, and they don't have to come here. If they're in Bulgaria and they want to do it, all they have to do is make the application, sign the agreement and such, and we come to terms and get it notarized. And then we simply have somebody local there, because I have colleagues all over the world who will do this sort of thing for me. I simply tell them, go ahead, do the test, and report to me, and they're always negative.
You've been very generous with your time. One last question. We've talked about There's a sucker born every minute. You know, I was one of them for a long time, and maybe again. You just never know. You know, we're all candidates to be duped if we don't have our eyes and ears open. But let's give them the happy ending. Have you had people who have seen your research, seen your exposés, read your books, who have seen the faith healing phenomenon, the psychic phenomenon, and other phenomenons that are like them through a different lens, thanks to your work, and come back to you and said, wow, I've totally changed my perspective? Do you get those stories?
Oh, yes. I get them just about, well, I'm looking at my screen. I don't see anything on the screen here on the computer this morning. But I do get these letters every now and then. And they usually start out, Mr. Randi, I thought you were a terrible man. And then I bought your book, Flim Flam, or whatever they get, the Faith Eaters, or any of the books I've written. Or I got in on your website and discussed things with people. And now I'm turned around. I very, very seldom get people who get turned around and then turn back again. I think I've got a sort of a permanent effect on people. And the interesting thing, I must say, and I'll leave you with this observation, and it's a very, very heartwarming one for me, very satisfying. I very frequently get notes from people who say, after I had this burden lifted from me, I felt such a relief. I felt freed. Now, I thought at one time in my naivete that they would say, oh, I'm so disappointed. It's a terrible thing for me to have to live with no belief. No, they usually go the opposite way. In fact, in almost every case, they go the opposite way. They say, I'm now relieved. I'm starting to live a real life now that I know is based on reason and rationality. And they are relieved by it rather than oppressed by it.
James Randi will be one of the featured presenters at the Reason Rally on March the 24th. I know I'm going to be in attendance in the crowd. You know, when I made the turn from religion to non-belief or to skepticism, you were one of the people that I discovered, and I was hungry to. I watched your videos and was reading your articles and books and browsing your website. And so without gushing too much, I just wanted to thank you. It's a tremendous honor for me to have the opportunity to speak to you and to have a conversation with someone who was so instrumental. And you've sort of helped to reawaken curiosity and skepticism. Now when I walk into a room, I'm a little more apt to be dubious, ask the questions, demand the evidence, make sure it's real. And so I owe you a tremendous debt. Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you for calling, and let's do it again.
I'm going to come back in just a second, and I'm going to sort of qualify why I'm spending so much time with Peter Popoff, all right? But I think it's unfair of me to reference him so much with James Randi in that conversation without playing you the audio of what James Randi did back in 1986, I believe was the year. Now, Peter Popoff was a healing evangelist. He was going around, he was making a ton of money. And James Randi took an associate, and they went into the audience, and they exposed Peter Popoff's lie. And I have some audio of that very healing service right here.
Take this message to the world. It's the season of harvest.
During the 1980s, I entered a world that I found filled with fantasy and rife with abuse. The world of faith healing. I developed a special interest in a television evangelist named Peter Popoff.
And God told me, he said, you smite that cancer with your fist.
At the time, Popoff was pulling in nearly $4 million a year, healing people on his miracle crusades.
You've got cancer of the stomach? Are you ready for God to burn that cancer out? Here it goes in the mighty. Devil, back off. Back off, devil! Woo. Hallelujah! Hallelujah!
You really believe you're healed?
Yes.
You think your cancers are gone now?
Yes, I believe that because God never lies and we stand in His word. Praise the Lord.
I tell you, from now on, you're going to have a song of victory in your heart. Amen.
To his followers, Popoff seemed to have divine powers.
Is it Gould? Alice Gould?
He knew their names.
Stand up, Alice.
as well as the afflictions they'd come to cure.
God is touching that thyroid condition right now. God is touching your nerves right now. God is touching your eyes. Just lift up your hands, get ready, here it comes.
He also knew the personal details of their
You're going to
lives.
hear good news from Charles before everything is over. I'll tell you, he's going to be completely delivered because of your prayers, because of your faith. Here it comes, complete healing in Jesus. Woo! Mighty name, right now, right now, right now. Amen. It's all right to praise the Lord.
I suspected that Popoff's revelations were other than divine. The radio scanner we brought to the hall picked up a decidedly worldly source.
Hello, Petey. Can you hear me? If you can't, you're in trouble.
Popoff was being prompted by his wife through a wireless earpiece.
John?
Deary Johnson.
She'd gotten her information from prayer cards filled out by the faithful before the show began.
She wants to get rid of the walker.
You want to get rid of this walker, sister? Oh, glory. How long have you been walking on that walker?
About 3 years.
3 years.
She lives at 1627 10th Street.
1627 10th Street? Is that right?
That's right.
She has arthritis all over.
Burning this arthritis right out of your body. Take a few steps just to make the devil mad. Hallelujah. That's it. Just move around a little bit. There she goes. Just walk with me. Oh, glory to God. She's not going to need that walker anymore. God's just putting new strength, new health, burning that arthritis out of her body. Just keep going. Hallelujah.
All right, so Peter Popoff exposed, well, he said at the time, he said, well, you know, there's nothing wrong with using a little assistance. I mean, he totally equivocated, totally dodged it, declared bankruptcy. Right now, if you go online to peterpopoff.org, peterpopoff.org, you'll see that he's alive and well and still a millionaire. And guess what? According to the homepage, if you share your most urgent need with Reverend Popoff, he will rush your miracle spring water to you and agree with you in prayer. And you will see a little vial, like a little plastic container, and it says miracle spring water on it. There's a place for you to put in your name, your address, your phone, your email, and of course your prayer request. And once you are on that list, the first letter you get is your little vial of miracle spring water plus a request for money. And you will get request after request after request. Now, having been to an uncountable number of church services, many of them healing services or prayer services or revival services, the tactic of most mainstream pastors, evangelists, faith healers is to distance themselves from people like Peter Popoff. No, he's the wrong. He's not. He's a charlatan. He's a fake. He's a fake. What they're doing essentially is they are separating themselves from someone who has obviously been debunked, someone who is so over the top. And of course, well, I'm not. I'm legitimate. God is now using me as his representative. You can trust me. And anywhere you go, I'll bet in any city of the United States, you will go to a faith healing service. You might mention the name of somebody like Peter Popoff or someone else who has been exposed in the news. And they'll say, oh, no. They're counterfeits. No, you came here tonight for a real healing. But their tactics are exactly the same. High emotion, subjective people, desperate for healing, desperate for answers, desperate for a spiritual solution, often financially destitute. It's like those people who go to the casino with their last $100 in this world. You know, trying to hit it big. One last act of desperation. And when the emotions are gone and the endorphins wear off and the adrenaline's completely waned, they go back home to the exact same problems that they had before. And I know many of our listeners have experiences with faith healers as well. Let me go to the phones and talk to area code 504. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth. It's Bruce calling from New Orleans.
Glad you're calling. You have a faith healer experience or an opinion on the subject for me?
Yeah, actually, down here in New Orleans or the southern Louisiana area, we have the Cajun faith healers called traiteur or traiteuse, which is, they're not evangelical. They're not, most of them do it out of their house. Most of them actually learn it from childhood. The prayers are passed down, secret prayers that only they know. I'm sure there's money involved and stuff like that, but it's actually from childhood that they start this, passing the grandfather or the grandmother to the mother, whatever. Well, there was a recent episode of Swamp People, I think it was last season, where one of the characters, Liz, fell and sprung her ankle. No talk of the doctor, no talk of medical, whatever. She goes to a traiteur. So the old lady goes to the house and she prays quietly. She says the secret, no one can know the prayers. Well, she walks away. She's still limping, but yet they never say she actually went to receive medical help, real medical help. Did it heal? Did it get worse or whatever?
When someone goes to a prayer or revival or healing service, right, and when the evangelist has moved on, right, he's packed up his tent and he's moved on, or he's at least moved on to someone else, people punish themselves. I didn't have enough faith. If I'd only believed, if only I'd been more in tune with God, if I'd only stood on the Bible, it's my fault. I still have a problem. Do you know what this person said? Or?
Well, see, that's it. They never really recapped on her injury, and most of them, they do it out of their home, so they're in the community. People have come to them for generations. It's almost like, instead of going to the doctor first, let's go to Mama Sylvie down the road and pray on your ankle. So I'm
glad to know there's some free thinkers in Louisiana, man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. All right. Well, tell them they're not alone out there in New Orleans, okay?
One quick little thing I wanted to add. Just recently started listening to your podcast, and I've been like sucking them in like nobody's business. So I just want to say that I'm a Harry Potter loving, military, out of the closet atheist who celebrates Halloween and believes in evolution. Had to get that out.
You have listened to a bunch of our podcasts over the past few months. It's funny, when I started this in the middle, being a broadcaster, I really kind of fell back into it. But people seem to be hungry for it. I mean, a lot of people give me hell for not producing a video. I'm not posting a video online. It's another podcast. God. But time and again, I get people who say, this assures me. I listen to it while I'm working out or while I'm driving to the office, or I was, taking a trip in the airport, had it on my iPod, and I'm hearing stories of people who just enjoy. And there's just no better feeling than knowing that I love doing it, but I really want people on the other end of the radio show to feel like, man, I enjoy listening. It helps me. So that's probably the best compliment you can give me. Thank you so much.
Every day, I drive an hour to and from work, so I downloaded iTunes and let it play while I drive to work. And actually, your podcast was the first I've ever listened to. I've never engaged into any of the podcasts, and much less calling into one. So I guess you broke my podcast virginity. But I appreciate it, man. Keep up the good work, and have a good night.
Appreciate it very, very much. We're getting a lot of iTunes listeners. It's funny, in January of 2011, I was looking at the stats on Blog Talk Radio. It provides those to hosts, and I think we were getting about 35,000 downloads for that month, which I thought was great. Wow, 35,000. That's fantastic. How encouraging. January of 2012, we were at, I'm doing it from memory here, but it was 126,000 listens online in a 30-day period. And it was tremendously humbling. I mean, I just thought, wow, fantastic. I'm so glad people are engaging and enjoying doing this. It helps me. I don't know how much you know about me. I love the people I'm surrounded by in my inner circle, but they're almost all believers. I love them. Love them. But this is the one 90-minute stretch in the week where I can sit down and connect with people who don't think I'm going through a midlife crisis, or they don't think that I'm deluded or I've been deceived. It's the work of the evil one, and they are constantly praying for my redemption. The prodigal must come home. They're not giving me the mannequin stare. You know, they're not quoting scripture. They're not making me a science fair project. They get me. I sort of depend on you guys. I'm an addict. My name is Seth. I'm an addict. I've been sober for 4 years. That's exactly how I feel. But we're talking about faith healers. I totally went off on a bunny trail there. Sorry about that. Area code 303. Thank you for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth. This is Karina from Colorado. My grandmother had recently gotten into some weird Asian thing called the light. Basically, they pray over people in Japanese, and it's real weird.
So, I mean, what are we talking about? Incense and, sitar music? Or
No guitar or anything. It's just Japanese praying. Basically, about 3 years ago, she got a knee replacement, and it didn't go so well. She's been hurting a lot. She's been on a lot of pain pills. Also been going through some hard times because my mother died about 4 years ago, and, she's just been going through some depression and stuff. But she got into the light, and at first I wasn't sure what to think because the lady that does the light for her does it for free. All she has to do is come down, and the lady will do the little thing. And she claims that it helped her pain, and then later they wanted money so that she could learn to do the light herself. I told her that it wasn't a good idea, that I thought, it was pretty much just a placebo effect type thing. But she did it anyway. And now she gets annoyed with me because she wants to give me the light to help with I have no idea what, because I'm perfectly healthy.
So are we talking about somebody who's paying their Social Security check to somebody? I mean, is she a woman of means?
Oh, no, she's retired. She's not wealthy at all. That's one of the reasons why I didn't want her to do that.
In her mind, though, does it give her peace and comfort? She believes, right? She believes she's getting help.
Yeah, she thinks that it's working, but it's not, I don't think. There was a couple of times where she even said that it doesn't seem to be working as well anymore. But the lady that gives her the light said that that's just the bad spirits or something like that getting inside her, and they were giving her negative energies, and that was the reason why. That she's trying to fight back against those negative energies.
That's what James Randi was talking about. You give off negative vibration. You're cramping my style here. You're getting into my spirit world. You got to just back up off me.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're saying. They do the same thing when it comes to doubt. When you're a believer and you start to doubt your faith, if you have a legitimate doubt, they'll say, test God, test your faith. But what they mean is test it, and if you come back with an answer that we don't like, then it's the evil one.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's the devil. It's, it's negative vibrations. That's what it is. Well, all my best to you and your grandma. I hope eventually she kind of wakes up and saves her coin and does something more productive with it.
I hope so, too.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks.
Let's do one more real fast. 530. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Ash. I'm from California.
Thanks for calling, Ash. Appreciate you very much. All right, what do you have for us today?
Well, kind of on the topic of the whole faith healing thing, over in this area, there's actually a church called Bethel, and it's kind of a Pentecostal church, but they've got this whole program called the Bethel Supernatural School of Ministry, where they teach you to do faith healings, essentially.
What are we talking about? I mean, they lay on of hands. They teach you how to put your hands on someone else or push them over or make them faint, or?
Yeah, kind of. It's actually the church I went to when I was younger and before I deconverted.
I'm guessing Bethel is like an Assembly of God Pentecostal experience, right?
Yeah, they actually, they're kind of overboard Pentecostals so much that they got asked to leave Assemblies of God, from what I've heard.
They were so outrageous, they were asked to leave the Assembly of God church.
It's the rumors that I've heard. As a kid, at least, if you watch the documentary Jesus Camp, that's pretty much how it was as a kid there.
And what, you had enough? You finally busted out, obviously.
Yeah, it was kind of a gradual process. It took a few years. I actually was finally deconverted right around the time when you were, from what you've said.
Well, that was a good year. Definitely a good year, man.
Yeah, I actually, one of the Smart Miss Susie was actually one of the first videos I found, and it was the only one you had on the channel at the time.
Yeah, it was one of my very first.
I subscribed to you immediately. I loved the video, and I've been watching ever since.
Well, I'm glad you escaped, and appreciate your input. You have a great week. Thanks again for calling.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
I had an email from Glenn. He said, I live in Norway. In the town I live in, we're in the middle of the Norwegian Bible Belt. Although this town's no longer in the buckle of the belt, it's painfully obvious that we're pretty close. At the last local elections, the Christian Democratic Party is now in power together with the conservatives. By the way, try to guess where the money is in this town. In secular hands or in the bank accounts of the religious congregations. Well, just north of this town, Glenn says, there's a community called, wow, I hope I say this right. Forgive me for not knowing it. Is it Vennesla? Vennesla, Vennesla. I'm going to go with Vennesla. This is the home of a faith healer, and he has his own phone service where you call in and his voice will be played of a tape recording that lasts for 12 minutes or so, and he claims he can heal the sick. Lately, his business has gone down a bit, so he's just started a new service, Preemptive Prayers. Yes, mothers, you can now call him and he can pray for you to not get sick. It's a 15-minute recording where the last 2 is a prayer for your health and well-being. The rest is just idle talk about health. 15 minutes for about $2.5 a minute. And the best part is, if you do get sick, despite the prayers, you can get a partial refund. It's brilliant, and this man has the nerve to say, well, everyone's got to make a living. Even some evangelicals let their palms meet their faces, but some insist that the prayers have cured them. Give me strength. Cheers. From Norway. Glenn, thank you so much for the message. Robert says, my mom used to drag us to these guys when we were little. I've been to see Ernest Angley, Oral Roberts, and Leroy Jenkins. You might know Mr. Jenkins has been arrested at least twice for assault because he tried to, quote, beat the hell out of someone. And he saw this as a good thing since he was removing the devil from this guy's soul. What, he just laid hand. I've seen him do the thing where they put their hands on their foreheads with incredible verve, you know, come at you, and bam, some 90-year-old lady just about loses her head. It's horrible. Back to the letter. I'm sorry. My mom spent what little money she had to send us to these guys and others foolishly. She used to buy holy water by the 4-gallon case from Reverend Jenkins. We were on welfare. We never had much money to begin with. She went to these charlatans because she thought they'd heal my brother's asthma and help her and us get out of poverty. My brother grew out of his asthma as he grew older, and she stopped smoking, and today she's in a home with Alzheimer's, so either we were truly unredeemable sinners or those preachers were frauds, the whole lot of them. My bet is on the latter. Johnny says, I was raised as a Bible-believing Baptist in the mountains of southeastern Kentucky. I kind of grew out of it when I started thinking, but my younger stayed a believer. His spine was crushed in a Jeep accident when he was 18, and he spent 6 months in intensive care. He prayed constantly to be able to walk again and believed that God was going to heal him. He asked me to take him to 5 different faith healers over the next 2 years, and I did. They have guys to go around and ask you about your medical condition before the show begins, and they would not let him near the stage because they knew they couldn't do anything for a person with a real problem. They have several people that are ringers and get healed over and over again. But most of the people were just gullible enough to think they were healed, at least until the emotional high wore off. Eddie died when he was 21 years and 6 days old, still believing God was going to make him walk again. Thanks for the letter. 872, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Pierce?
Pierce, what's going on?
I don't know. Throughout this time, it's like it's never been addressed. I've always wondered, why do they believe this? I don't understand that.
Well, P.T. Barnum used to say there's a sucker born every minute. You know, there have always been scam artists, not just in religion, everywhere. People are always going to be sheep. It was funny. I was talking to Bill Morgan, a friend of mine who is he was on the founding staff at Oral Roberts University. We're going to talk about Oral Roberts here in a minute, by the way. He was on the founding staff back when he was a true blue believer, right? Well, over the course of time, he fell out with the university and fell out with his faith. He's now an atheist. He spoke at the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention last year, and we talked from time to time. And we had a conversation, and he told me, he said, you know what? It's a good thing that you and I are honest people of character. And I'm like, well, really? Why? You know what? What? He said, if you and I wanted to tonight, he said, if we wanted to, the church is gullible enough, we could go back to the church and say we had a religious reconversion. We were atheists, right? We were deceived. And Jesus appeared to us, and we could come up with some wild scenario. You know, I was standing by the fridge, and there was Jesus right there. You know, I was driving in my car, and I heard his voice. Or we could just come up with whatever bullshit story we wanted to, and we would be welcomed in churches all across the country, and they'd probably pass the freaking plate for us. You know, Seth used to be an atheist. He had his website. He used to produce videos. He spoke around the nation. And look at him now, everybody. Let's hear a praise the Lord for Seth, who finally, the prodigal has come home. Let's support Seth's ministry. I mean, can imagine how much of a temptation that would be for anybody who was charismatic, who had a great story. And people want to believe. Some people, what did James Randi call them? The unstinkable rubber ducks. You just can't tell them, you know? So I honestly think there've always been the gullible. There will always be the sheep. Pierce, thanks for the call. Take it easy, man.
All right, Seth, thanks.
Is it Johan on Skype? You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. What's your name?
John. Yeah, I'm from Toledo, Ohio.
John, thanks for calling. What do you have for us today?
I'm a Boy Scout, and one year I wasn't able to make it to be a Boy Scout. And so my parents found out another area so that I could go camping. And it was just like what you would see in the movie Jesus Camp. I mean, it was just like it. And the lady that we had was, I would say, Mr. Popoff, the God Warrior from Wife Swap, I think.
I remember, was the God Warrior the lady who came back and said, it's dark-sided. Everything's dark-sided.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to have everybody Google that clip if you haven't seen it. There's a lady, now I don't watch Wife Swap, but apparently this really devout kind of redneck Christian lady goes and lives with a non-believing family. Is that the gist? And so when she comes back, she rips up the check, the payment that the producers paid her for her participation, and flips out, starts talking about how they're not Christians. Everything's dark-sided. So it was like that, huh? Pretty over the top?
Yeah, and there was a few acts that I can remember on the Friday prayer revival. And one of them was, there was a kid who was on his bike, and he broke both of his legs. They weren't serious fractures. They just needed to keep it in cast. And so they actually told him, you're not wearing school clothes or jeans like everybody else. And they had him wear sweatpants.
He was in a cast and they put him in sweatpants?
Yeah, they made him walk.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they used him as sort of like, he has broken legs and now he can walk.
Well, I'm hearing more Jesus Camp type stories from people just like you, but I'm glad you're able to see it objectively, and I'm glad you found your way out, and I appreciate your call, John. Thank you very much. There was an article written by the American Cancer Society, and it says, what is the evidence? And I just grabbed a few snippets of it for you. It says, although it is known that a small percentage of people with cancer experience remissions of their disease that cannot be explained, available scientific evidence does not support claims that faith healing can actually cure physical ailments. When a person believes strongly that a healer can create a cure, a placebo effect can occur. The placebo effect can make the person feel better, but has not been found to induce remission or improve chance of survival from cancer. The patient usually credits the improvement in how he or she feels to the healer, even though the perceived improvement occurs because of the patient's belief in the treatment. Taking part in faith healing can evoke the power of suggestion and affirm one's faith in a higher power, which may help promote peace of mind. This may help some people cope more effectively with their illness. One review published in 1998 looked at 172 cases of deaths among children treated by faith healing instead of conventional methods. These researchers estimated that if conventional treatment had been given, the survival rate for most of these children would have been more than 90%, with the remainder of the children also having a good chance of survival. A more recent study found that more than 200 children had died of treatable illnesses in the United States over the past 30 years because their parents relied on spiritual healing rather than conventional medical treatment. In addition, at least one study has suggested that adult Christian scientists who generally use prayer rather than medical care have a higher death rate than other people of the same age. It's from the American Cancer Society. A guy named Stephen Barrett, he's an MD. He has an article on a website. It's a great website. It's called Quack Watch. Yeah, like he's a quack. And there was an article called Some Thoughts about Faith Healing. A segment from it about evangelistic healers says during the early 1970s, Minnesota surgeon William Nolan, MD, attended a service conducted by Catherine Kuhlman, the leading evangelical healer of that period. After noting the names of 25 people who had been, quote, miraculously healed, he was able to perform follow-up interviews and examinations. Among other things, he discovered that one woman who had been announced as cured of lung cancer actually had Hodgkin's disease, which was unaffected by the experience. Another woman with cancer of the spine had discarded her brace and followed Miss Kuhlman's enthusiastic command to run across the stage. The following day, her backbone collapsed. 4 months later, she died. Overall, not one person with organic disease had been helped. Dr. Nolan reported his findings, which included observations of several other healers, in Healing, a Doctor in Search of a Miracle, a book I heartily recommend. He says so in the article. I continue. A study examined what happened to anxiety, depression, and self-esteem in 406 patients who received intercessory prayer or no prayer. The prayer was offered for 15 minutes daily for 12 weeks. The researcher reported improvement in all of the subjects, but found no differences between the prayer and the no prayer groups. A study of the effects of intercessory prayer on 40 recovering alcoholics also found no benefit. A 6-month study of 40 advanced AIDS patients exposed to 10 weeks of distant healing reported fewer new illnesses, physician visits, and hospitalizations in the distant healing group. 2001 Mayo Clinic researchers have found no significant effect of intercessory prayer by one or more persons on behalf of another, on the medical outcomes of more than 750 patients who were followed for 6 months after discharge from an hospital coronary care unit. The patients were randomized within 24 hours of discharge into a prayed-for group and a control group. The prayer group involved at least one session per week for 26 weeks by 5 randomly assigned individual or group intercessors. He finishes, intercessory prayer studies accomplish nothing. Believers won't change their view if further studies are negative, and non-believers won't change theirs if additional studies appear positive. Prayer may help some people feel reassured when they are worried, but to me it makes more sense to spend one's time and energy on more constructive, health-promoting activities. Although luck is still a significant factor, I think it's more sensible to believe that health is more likely to be influenced by prudent living than by magical thinking. Also, if praying for people worked, would strangers praying against them cause them to become sicker? Or as one of my religious friends put it, is God so stupid that he or she would respond to popularity contests? Stephen Barrett, MD. There's a concept about prayer that I addressed in a recent blog called Nothing Fails Like Prayer, which was a takeoff of Dan Barker's parody song that he wrote after he had turned from being an evangelical Christian into one of America, in fact, the world's most prominent atheists. We talked about prayer, and if you think about prayer for healing, prayer for whatever, you think about it objectively, it makes no sense. I'm on Facebook. Somebody was talking about a child in the hospital with I don't know what the affliction was. I can't even remember what it was. But we've seen those type of posts all the time. So-and-so is in the hospital. Poor little girl. Send out your prayers. And inevitably, if you are in a Christian circle, you will see a litany of comments after that post that said, our prayers, praying now, our family's praying, right? And you think about prayer in that context, it makes no sense. If normally they will pray, Lord, if it be your will, which is the ultimate out, right? Well, if it's God's will, it should happen anyway. If it's God's will and he's holding on to the aces in the deck, waiting for you to come to him, right, to plead, well, that makes God a sadist. It's God's will for the little girl to be healed. But I'm going to hang back, right? I'm God. I'm going to hang back until I know you really want it. I want to hear it, people. Send those prayers up. I want to hear my name. In Jesus' name, in God's name, God be praised. Praise God. To God be the glory. I want to hear it. And until I do, I'm going to do nothing. If it isn't God's will for the child to be healed, the prayers are worthless anyway. Because God's will be done. No matter what the prayer scenario looks like, it makes no sense for you to pray for anything. Right? It's either God's will, it's not his will, or it's his will and he's a bastard. He's a sadist. He's a monster. He gets off on watching the cancer-ridden body of a 7-year-old in the hospital writhe with poisons and chemo and everything else under the grieving tears of parents and family and friends. He's going to wait on that. He's just going to hang back and wait until you have to ask me, and you have to ask me in the right way, or it's just not going to happen. Area code 801. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Thank you so much for your patience. Who's this?
Yeah, this is Josh in Salt Lake City.
Glad you're calling, Josh. You're in Mormon country out there. Everybody rooting for Romney? Everybody out there rooting for Romney or what?
No. Actually, we've all come to understand. I'm just another Utah in a Utah part of the world. But I've been wanting to call your show for a while. I mean, I'm actually in your chat room right now. But it's funny, because Mormons actually don't really do the whole faith healing thing. I mean, I think it's funny that, I never heard of what his name, Popoff? Yeah, I never heard of him until this show.
Do you pray for blessings or healing in the Mormon church? Educate me. I mean, what do they go for?
Well, what they do is, we have a thing called an anointing oil where basically they will use olive oil and they bless it. And once it's been used, we can't be using it for cooking. No. But it's still in there. It's got a little label on it, consecrated Mormon oil.
It's olive oil that you'd pick up at Walmart?
Well, yeah, it's just your standard oil you can buy then, Smith's, Walmart, whatever. Yeah. And once it's blessed, though, they can't use it. So what they do, they basically put it away and they use it for certain blessings. But anyway, Seth, this is great to talk to you the first time. I tell you, I've been listening to you ever since I heard you last year. I listened to all your episodes on YouTube. I went and recorded them all, put them on MP3 player. I listened to them all the time. You need to do another facepalm episode. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's one of my first. It's funny. I don't really have a schedule lined up for the next several weeks. Maybe we'll do a facepalm episode, and you can call back in.
All right, sounds good.
All right, take it easy.
Hey, you too, Seth.
Very enthusiastic guy. Addison on Skype. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Oh my God. Hello?
Is it Addison?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Where are you calling from?
God, I'm calling from England, UK.
I'm so glad. What time is it there? It's got to be 3 in the morning?
It's 13 minutes past 1.
Wow. Well, what do you have for us on Faith Healers today?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for doing these shows. You've been such a big inspiration.
Thank you.
So many people must tell you all the time, but yeah, just thank you so much for doing these shows.
Well, it's my pleasure. Honestly, now in England, you guys don't have a whole lot of religion going on. I mean, I know you've got the Church of England, but I hear people all the time from your part of the world say, geez, America must be a crazy place.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. We have like it's kind of, you don't really speak about it as much. Like most people are. It's kind of 50-50. Most people are either religious or they're not religious. But you do get quite a lot of people believing in, like spiritual ghosts and fortune tellers and things like that. So that's a bit of a downside to it.
Do they have like revival preachers or faith healing preachers?
It's not really the faith healing. It's more like the sort of psychics and things like that. But it just reminded me, the Peter Popoff story.
Yes.
It just reminded me of this woman called Psychic Sally. She was basically, yeah, great name. She was basically a massive TV a psychic, and she had shows, and she was selling out massive theaters and things like this. And it was basically all over the newspapers and on the radio about a year ago. She was doing this big, massive theater, packed out theater, doing all these readings, and telling people that their like granddad was like speaking to them and stuff like that. Basic cold reading, and you can tell it from like miles away. And basically, these two women sat at the back of the theater. They could hear this man speaking, talking through this back little window that they had open. And basically, Psychic Sally was saying everything that the man was saying 10 seconds afterwards. And it was revealed that she had like the best thing was it was on her own footage from the show. It showed her taking off a hidden earpiece.
Beautiful.
And she was basically just found out the same way Popoff was, and she's again sadly back doing it, selling out theaters.
That's beautiful. Look, it's like when Randy exposed Peter Popoff or Uri Geller or any of those other guys. Wouldn't you have liked to have been in the audience when it happened, just to feel that wash of euphoria come over you as you realize another charlatan has been exposed? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now you guys have Darren Brown over there, right?
He's like one of my heroes. I've just basically like whenever people say, I've visited a fortune teller or did you see Most Haunted on TV and things like that, basically the first thing out of my mouth is, have you ever seen Darren Brown before?
Well, the challenge we have here in the States is that Darren Brown is not known.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he often uses it to his advantage.
Yeah.
Darren Brown, I believe it was last year, did an entire hour-long special on faith healing. Now, I can't, for copyright reasons, I can't play it for you on this show, but I believe it's available online.
Yeah.
If it's not blocked. Sometimes they'll block some of Darren's stuff because of proprietary reasons, I think. But he did like a whole hour, right, where he picked a guy, just an average everyday Joe, and he taught him. I forgot what he did, but didn't he teach him how to be a faith healer, how to pass himself off as one?
Yeah, he taught him how to. He was basically, I think he was a plumber or electrician, nothing at all to do with faith healing or spirituality. I think he said he was slightly religious, but he didn't mind doing it to expose the charlatans. And he basically taught him all the tricks of cold reading, hot reading, throwing out random things that anybody could pick up and make it their own, and he went round and toured America with this guy who he trained up, and so many people believed in him and stuff like that. And then at the end they had an audience, and he basically just revealed how he'd done it afterwards to this audience, and it was just great to see the reactions of the people who had been fooled by it. And
the thing about Darren Brown is that he's not cruel about it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He used to be he says, I used to be a happy, clappy Christian. Those were his words.
Yeah.
And when he essentially exposed the ruse to everyone, he said he wasn't trying to kill their hope, but he was like, protect yourself, protect your mind and heart. Realize that these people are out there. I thought he handled it very well.
Yeah, that was great. I think that was great about how he wasn't as in your face. Look at how stupid you've been and how you've been tricked by it. It's look how the people use these techniques to fool people, and maybe you should think twice next time they ask you to donate to these sort of things. That was the whole way he went about it. It wasn't too cruel, which it's a good way to get people to not shut off straight away, not be too angry about it.
Well, I think Darren Brown enjoys his anonymity because he can come to the States and do things like that. But I would encourage everybody to, if you don't know who he is, it's Derren. It's a little bit of a strange spelling.
Yeah.
Derren Brown. He's obviously a performer. All of his stuff's very dramatic. It's incredibly well shot and produced and lit, and the audio and the music, everything is very much over the top. But he knows it. He knows he's a showman, and he tells you, this is all a bunch of BS.
He basically started out as a sort of illusion, like a stage illusionist. So he did, card tricks, hypnotism and things like that. And at the beginning of his shows, he always starts off by saying all the events that you'll see tonight, they're not used by stooges. They're all it's magicianship, showmanship, confusion, trickery, and things like this. And then he basically he'll either do tricks that he's made up himself that are just unbelievable, they're worth watching anyway, or he'll do a special or a take on, popular things that people can get tricked by, so psychics, faith healers, all sorts of things like that. And he shows how it can be very easily done using, provable techniques that you can actually, say there's nothing spiritual about it whatsoever.
People are going to wonder if, Darren Brown is sponsoring this portion of my show. I tend to gush over him. Well, I stumbled upon him at the same time I was starting to see a lot of the other stuff that I was looking at on YouTube from Dawkins and Hitchens and these guys. And somehow there was a link that led me to a link, and I was like, oh, look at this guy. He's amazing. He did one more anecdote, everybody. Just bear with me while we're talking. All right. Addison and I, we're having a moment here, everybody. But he's great at, he's a hypnotist, right?
That's right.
So they set up an arcade. Talk about the power of suggestion. Did you see it? Yeah. They set up a video arcade and they brought it in, and I don't know if it was a way that the screen was flashing, but he has some technique that he did not divulge. Yeah. And it put the guy playing the video game, the stand-up video game in the arcade, it put him into like a hypnotic state.
Yeah.
And they whisk him down the street several blocks where they had built a life-size representation of the game screen, the actual game environment, right?
Zombie hospital, yeah.
It was a zombie hospital. And he snaps his fingers, or there's another, I don't know, they put some bogus plastic gun in his hand.
Yeah.
And he wakes up in this blackened, dark, creepy place with zombies tearing down, and he literally ends up playing the game live. In from the inside out, and he's screaming and he's carrying on, and I don't know how long they let it go on, like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, God. The poor guy was scared to death. And then at the last second, Darren Brown runs out, grabs him, he puts his hand on his head, and he essentially puts him back in the hypnotic state. I don't know how they do it. And they run him back down to the arcade, and they place him in front of the video game, and he snaps back to and does not realize that he was just there inside the game screen. It is, I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll be very, very quick. There's a slight variation one as well. It's called Hero at 30,000 feet. It's basically people apply for the show, and then he narrows it down to this one guy, and he picks like the most shy guy you could find, like complete opposite of outgoing. And he gives him challenges that in his everyday life he doesn't know they're from Darren Brown, and he builds his character up and makes him more confident in his everyday life. And he makes him fly on an aeroplane to somewhere. I can't remember what the reason was. And basically, the whole aeroplane is filled out with actors and actresses and the stewardess, and everything's all fake. Darren Brown then gets the people on the tannoy to announce that the pilot and the co-pilot are incapacitated somehow. They've had like some sort of heart failure, or the pilot's been incapacitated. And then he basically says, is there anybody that can help us fly this plane? The ground control will talk you through it, but we need somebody to help. And he's got this timer on the screen, and I think if he agrees to do it, he wins some money or something like that. And basically, in the last 3 seconds, this guy, you can see him in his seat. He's like really like debating, but should I help people? Should I not? And he gets up and he's like, yeah, I can do it. I don't know how to fly a plane, but I'll try. I'll do my best. We're all going to die anyway if not. So he's walking to the front of the plane. Darren Brown jumps out. He basically interrupts his movements and shocks him and puts him in a trance. The plane lands, and then what they do is they put him in a simulator. Like the simulators you can get at fairgrounds. And he basically ground control through this simulator, talking how to fly the plane down and stuff like that. And it's basically just like such a great moment to see this guy. And then obviously he walks out the simulator and it's in this big airplane hangar and everyone's clapping. And yeah, it's just amazing.
Wow. Addison, you're a great caller. I feel like two guys who have the same hobby who end up just say, hey, because I could talk about this stuff all day, but I appreciate it very much. I'm so glad to know that you're listening in England. And if you ever get over here, bring Darren with you. We'll call it a day. I'll buy you coffee. Okay.
Thank you so much. I just want to say I'm a massive, massive fan. And also, can I just tell Caroline that I love her very much, please?
I'm sorry, I just lost the last part of your call. What'd you say?
I just said my girlfriend listens to the show as well. I just wanted to tell Caroline that I love her loads.
Oh, and it's the day after Valentine's Day. That's so sweet. Hey, thanks for calling, brother, and say hi to your lady for me, okay?
Thank you so much. We love you, Seth.
Thank you. All of this with Darren Brown still, I think, relates to the phenomenon of the power of suggestion. In my opinion, and from my experience, this is exactly what we're talking about. Think about it. You go to an environment where the lighting, the mood, the pacing, the music, the cadence of speech, and many tactics that people like Darren Brown and others use to put suggestive people, and it doesn't work on everybody. In fact, Darren will tell you many of the tactics he uses for hypnosis or otherwise don't work on everybody. There are some triggers. There are some things that you have to have. There are some, I think, personality characteristics. There are some things well beyond my realm of knowledge. But if you get people like that who are impressionable, who are in a moment of suggestion where they are vulnerable, and you put the environmental pieces in place and you tell them anything, they'll believe it. And that's why the Oral Roberts, I didn't really get to him during this show. Oral Roberts is a soft spot for me because he was an evangelist in the 60s and 70s. Oral Roberts University exists in the city in which I grew up. I used to work in the building, the hospital building that he was supposed to be a hospital. He said Jesus told him, appeared to him at 900 feet tall, said that you have to build an 800-foot tall city of faith, hospital and cancer center. He raises the money. He goes crazy. Just a few years, the hospital's in bankruptcy. Just a few years, they're like $25 million in debt. So God can appear to him and tell him that it's his charge to go out and build a hospital, but God cannot then keep it solvent. And it ignores the larger question, why would a faith healer like Oral Roberts need a hospital? He's a faith healer. Why do you need hospital beds and IVs and prescription medication? Why do you need a nursing staff? Just go in and heal them. God's using you as his conduit. Oh, makes me crazy. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I feel like I was kind of all over the place, but it's still been a tremendous pleasure. James Randi on the show and talking about your personal experiences. And overall, I know that these guys will always exist. They'll always be out there, but it's our charge. I think it's on us to try to ring that bell, of the alarm bell, to say, look, you're still hurting. You still have cancer. You still have the affliction. You are still infirmed. You still are not healed. Maybe somebody down the pike will listen. Maybe that seed of doubt we plant will later on come to fruition and become something where they question it themselves. It has happened before. If you have a suggestion for future podcasts, I could sure use your help because we've covered a lot of topics. I really enjoyed the subject-based shows. I want to do another whatever show in the next month or two where we just talk about whatever. I think we've had some people who've talked about, let's talk about prayer. I don't know if we can spend a whole 90 minutes talking about prayer. Everybody realizes that it is what it is. We can exchange anecdotes left and right. I don't want to bore anybody to tears. I was thinking about doing a show where I'll just call it totally off the subject. I came from morning radio. We talked about everything every day, all the time. We just talked about life, just stuff. And I thought about just to give everybody a break, would it be nice to do a show where all we just do is just kind of just talk about whatever. We take atheism right. We take religion off the table. I doubt it'll stay off the table. I'm sure somebody will bring it up. But just, whatever. We can talk about the state of the world. We can talk about something wild that happened in your life, something crazy, a funny story, something. I don't know. You think people would go for that, or you think they'd turn on me for changing the entire theme of the podcast for 90 minutes? Would they consider it a waste of a week? If you have a suggestion, drop by our Facebook page and make a note, or you can drop me an email at editor@thethinkingatheist.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community, for being a part of my life, for helping to encourage me, and just keep on keeping on. I'll see you here next week, Tuesday nights from now on the Thinking Atheist Radio Podcast.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.